Now, let's go to the Filipinos, man. The Filipinos. Remember those Filipinos? The Manong generation. They have a long history of organizing for their rights. And as we have witnessed in this class, the struggle to be accepted as part of the American social fabric for the Asian is filled with disillusionment. In the Asian diaspora, and especially the Filipino diaspora, reveals how a new system of explanation and rationale for action must be created self-consciously. We're going to go back to the documentary and we're going to appreciate the Filipino dimension, the Asian dimension to the United Farm Workers. Because the United Farm Workers and Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta could not have done it without the Filipinos. Let's appreciate that with the ending of the Barcero program, the union saw a chance to gain economic rights. And as Rudy Acuña, the great Rudy Acuña, the Chicano historian, the Chicano godfather of history, reminds us, economic rights in essence are human rights. Let's go to the struggle.
An opportunity. In the summer of 1965, Filipino workers called a wildcat strike against grape growers in the Coachella Valley, 150 miles to the east of Los Angeles.
The strike was won in 1 week because Coachella is a hot country and grapes ripen by the seconds, almost by the seconds. So what you did not pick today, it is ready tomorrow, waiting for us to come in. Come on and pick me, I'm ready.
The Coachella growers quickly gave in to the Filipinos' demand for $1.40 an hour. Now the workers set their sights on the grape harvest to the north, near the town of Delano. With a large Mexican-American workforce available to them, Delano growers refused the Filipinos' demand for a wage increase. Striking Filipinos quickly discovered that they had lost jobs and shelter as well.
Our home was right there in the camps. Growers threw out the belongings of some of those strikers in the camp where they are, outside of the rooms, locked their rooms. We sleep in our cars, under the trees surrounding the community hall.
The Filipinos knew their strike would fail without the support of the NFWA, the National Farm Workers Association, a recently formed organization of Mexican-American farm workers.
Our plan had been to quietly organize like for 5 years and to try to get the whole San Joaquin Valley organized before we even talked about doing anything like a strike. Then when the strike happened, well, everything, just changed.
With the Filipinos on strike, Mexican-Americans now had a decision to make. Most considered it a no-win situation. There was no strike fund. Farm workers had no savings. There was no money to support a walkout for even a few days. In Delano, families lived on a day-to-day basis, constantly on the edge. The strike could be a financial disaster.
To get involved, you had an awful lot to lose because the bosses of the fields were threatening everybody left and right that they would lose their jobs or they would not be hired, or there were even threats of deportation for some of the people who were like more recent arrivals. So it was pretty frightening on that level.
I mean, there were times when people were afraid to meet in their homes, that you had to go meet somewhere else, like in a park or down by the river or something, because they were afraid if somebody would find out and tell the labor contractor or the grower and they would get fired.
The NFWA called a strike meeting to see whether they would officially join the strike. And it was on September 16th, which, as you know, is Mexican Independence Day. And for any good Mexican, September 16th, I mean, we're all feeling full of revolutionary fervor and patriotism, and people started talking about how unfair what the growers were doing and why we needed to fight back. And then a guy gets up and starts talking. I said, oh, that must be Caesar. And he was tall with a mustache, very distinguished looking. I was very impressed. And then he says, now I want to introduce you to Cesar Chavez. And so then Cesar gets up, and he's this little guy, you know, he's very soft-spoken. That's Cesar? You know, I wasn't very impressed, but the more he talked, the more I thought that not only could we fight, but we could win.
We'll never stop. Our job will not be done until every farm worker is organized.
That was fertile ground. I mean, we were angry. Many of us were afraid. Many of us didn't know what to do. But we were just waiting. We were somebody just waiting for somebody to throw a match. And that's what Cesar did.
El día 8 de septiembre de los campos de Deleno salieron los filipinos. Y después de 2 semanas para unirse a la batalla.
The National Farm Workers Association voted to join the strike. With only $87 in its treasury, union leaders prayed that the work stoppage would be brief. Farm workers tightened their belts and bravely faced an uncertain future. Workers were thinking of the strike in terms of days or even weeks, not years.
My family realized that we weren't going anywhere, that we had a lot at stake, and that we had to basically stay and fight. That even, like my mother said, even if we starved to death, that we would not be alone, but that we had to stay and fight, because otherwise nothing was going to change.
Viva la revolución, arriba con nuestra unión, viva huelga en general.
All I can say is that the men have to be the judges of their own, what they want. And these men have chosen this type of work, just like farming. Anybody will tell you the farmers are taking the poorest of economics, but yet this is my choice. So the same with these workers. They have chosen this way of life, and if they were not happy, they wouldn't be here.
Not all growers were nice people. They just wanted to get their job done. Others were very compassionate to their workers. And so you can't just categorize them all as bad guys or good guys.
We came from a hard-working family, poor people. A lot poorer than a lot of these workers that work for us. Of course, it was a different time, a different period, but we were sympathetic to the working person because we did it.
Most of the growers in the Delano area settled there in the 1920s and 30s. They came from Southern and Eastern Europe.
Every one of these growers, such as my father.
Okay, due to time limits, there's still some more footage that I want to share with you, but we can appreciate something about the significance of the United Farm Workers.